you have to kind of tell yourself like whatever is best for me, what makes me happy is going to make them happy in the long run. Because if I'm unhappy, they're not going to be happy with an unhappy mom.
Hello, this is Tab Bartley, and you are listening to the Oath We Took podcast, the show that tells the Marine Corps story through the Marines that serve. This is the 8th episode, and I'm joined today by Kenzie Capers. She is the reason for this podcast. I know so many amazing Marines who hesitate to tell their stories. Their stories hold so much power and so many life lessons. Oftentimes, though, they go untold. Not every Marine story is the same. What is the same is the oath that we all took. I'm honored today to have Kenzie on to share a piece of her story. And I feel like I need to preface the fact that this episode will more than likely shed a few tears. Kenzie, I am so excited to have you here and honored. And I think it's strange that we've never actually met in person yet. I feel like I know you so well. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Tab. And yeah, I honestly feel like I know you. Like I've known you ever since I've met Paris. Honestly, I think like at the very beginning, he started talking about you. So I was like, from day one, I was like, oh, that's like my sister. Like that is someone I know. And we FaceTimed a couple of times and it was awesome. Like our kids were just running around. So.
The joys of the kids. And so earlier in the season, we had Capers on, who is your husband. And I wanted to have you on so that you could tell your story and tell us why you joined the Marine Corps and kind of your transition out of the Marine Corps, how your experience was both in and outside the Marine Corps. And then eventually we will do an episode with both of you where we talk about being dual military and what you guys are doing now. So super excited to start this conversation. And the first thing that I ask everybody is, why did you decide to join the Marine Corps?
Yeah, so interesting. I decided to join because I wasn't going like after high school, I did not want to go to college. I was like, I wasn't paying attention in high school. Why would I try to go to the same setting in like the same lecture type way? Why would I go back to that? So I was like, let me try to go to the workforce. 18 years old. I worked in a factory like deburring airplane parts. My friend got me a job at her dad's like factory. And then I was like, no, I can't do this. And like, I just had like different odd jobs. And I was like, this is not working out. And in like, I want to say sophomore year, I went and saw a Marine recruiter actually. And I just wasn't ready to be like, yes, I want to do this. I was like a sophomore in high school. Like, I can't think about this yet. But it was still in the back of my mind. My grandpa went into the Army and he played baseball. So I knew like a little bit of his story. So I was like, oh, that sounds like cool. So after I was like just working for a while, I wasn't satisfied. So I went and talked to an Air Force recruiter and a Marine recruiter. And the Air Force, it just didn't feel like what I wanted. I wanted, the hardest. Like I just felt more drawn to the Marines. My dad did tell me, he was like, please, try to go into the Air Force or something else, but ultimately is my decision. And I once I made that, there was no stopping me, like a couple months. I think I was in the depths for like 8 months, but like I was ready to go, so it was very interesting. And I am so happy I made that decision,
And you had mentioned that your dad had kind of encouraged you to go like the route of the Air Force. How, I guess, was his, once he knew you had joined and the rest of your family, how did they feel about that decision? And did that decision change once you became a Marine?
It definitely changed. They were just so proud of me. They were like, because they saw it too. They saw me like going kind of down a destructive path, but you know how it is. You can't, I was a teenager. I wasn't listening to them. I knew it all and I didn't want, they're influencing my decision. But once they saw like the woman I was becoming and how I'm getting my stuff together, they were super proud of me and, stood behind me the whole way, always supportive of my decisions. So it was really cool to see.
And one of the things we had talked about when we had like talked about this episode when we were kind of planning on like what the theme would be and what we would really discuss in it, was that you were kind of a little older when you went to boot camp compared to your peers. And in boot camp, like 1 year is like it feels like a huge difference. So how was that experience kind of being a little older than your peers?
Yeah, I did feel like I should be in more of like the leadership role. I felt older, a little bit more mature too. Like some things they just, I kind of was like, let's just do it, like kind of get through it. Mentally, I was there, trying to just kind of motivate some a little bit more. I never wanted to be the center of attention though. Like I never wanted to be like the, the guide. I never wanted to do that. I didn't want to stand out too much. But like I had my little group of where I like motivated them, So it was, I even still think about that time today, is like we'd be like in the rack at the end of the night, like talking about, I always talk about food with a lot of people just because that's like my thing. I'm a foodie.
That was one of the funny things about boot camp, how much food matters. And I always thought it was so cool that like females get a completely different diet than the men do, which is such a strange thing.
Yes, I have always brought that up too. I was like, they would get all of these desserts where I would get like a ham sandwich.
Cereal and no milk allowed. What were
no brownie?
Nothing. What were some of your favorite experiences in the Marine Corps? Some of the things that you just like, you loved while you were in the Marine Corps?
Yeah, so the first thing was that I got to go to ITB instead of MCT, and that's Infantry Training Battalion. It's a little bit longer than MCT. It's 3 months, I think. And then I had the weekends off. And that was really exciting experience because I got to like shoot all of these really cool guns that I didn't even know the names of. And just it was they put you in like these big leadership roles, like from the get-go too. I had to like lead Marines up this field, and just like putting you on the spot, like you make the calls, and you're the lead person, which was really cool. And the fact that we were the second platoon of women that actually got to go to ITB. So it was kind of like they were testing out to see if women could even withstand the training to be in infantry. And out of, I want to say like 20 of us, 12 of us made it. So it was just like, and then later on, which is even more amazing, like women are now doing it, which I think is like, hell yes.
Yeah.
Hell yes.
And at that time you volunteered for that, right? That was something you volunteered for?
Yeah, they sat us down at like the very end of boot camp and was like, so they explained to us like MCT is just this training where all Marines go through this training, but infantry is like only for infantrymen. You wouldn't actually have this MOS, but it's like a study to see if women can, go out and train infantry, and you have this opportunity to do it. And I was like, yes, let's go. This is why I joined,
I mean, you were literally part of making history. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah, like I don't think about it like that. But then like people over the years, people have like, what? That's so cool. And like Paris has always like hyped me up about that. So like later I'm like, yes, this is cool. This is awesome. I did do this. You look back and you're like, and you see the growth, like women are doing it now and doing different things. So it's so awesome to see.
And in such a short period of time as well. Like that's not like you served like 20 years ago, even 15 years ago. Like it was literally a few years ago that this was happening.
Yeah, I actually did that in 2014. Yeah.
Great. So crazy. And volunteering is something that was kind of a trend in your time in the Marine Corps, right? There was quite a few moments where you volunteered for things, or you you went with the flow, or you were super semper Gumby and kind of went with things. And can you tell me about it was your MOS that was another thing that you volunteered for and changed?
Yeah. So I went in as open contract because, like a lot of Marines say, like your recruiter is like, hey, there's an opening to go to boot camp, and it's open contract. So I jumped because I from a little town in Illinois, wasn't doing anything. I'm ready to go. So I was like, yes, let's go. I don't care. And then after I made it through ITB, so I don't know who it was, but I think one of the women that I went through it with. She was like, "Hey, can I like change my MOS to one of like the gunnies that we were talking to?" And he was like, "Let me see what I could do." And so I really don't even know who it was, but he was yeah, he was like, yeah, so with your scores, you could go into like these MOSs. And so I picked traffic management. It was called TMO, traffic management officer, basically. And I really didn't know what it was, but I didn't care. Like, I was still so excited. Like, you're in like this unknown, but it's so cool. So you're wearing this cool uniform. You just went through infantry training. So I was like, yeah, I'll do whatever, you know. And come to turn out, it's like FedEx for the Marine Corps, basically, where it's like shipping center. We would take packages to different units. I was mostly on Camp Pendleton during my time that I served, which I loved. California is beautiful, and fell in love with Cali there. It always has a place in my heart, even if I don't live there full time.
Especially coming from the Midwest, a huge dramatic change, right?
Yes. Yes.
And what were some of the challenges that you faced when you entered the Marine Corps?
Yeah. I would say like the very first thing that I noticed is that I didn't have a lot of confidence. Like at first, like even when it came to yelling, I didn't know how to yell or project my voice like that. So like one of my best friends came to me and she's like, "Hey, look, it just sounds like you're not, confident in yourself. So like just practice and work on it." And then I'm when there's like a huge crowd of people, I kind of like go into my shell. So boot camp is all these people, all these different personalities. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So I think try having to build up that confidence, like to speak up. And I'm still doing it today. You're still working on yourself every day, but the Marine Corps showed me what I needed to work on, at first, and still working. And then during ICB, a lot of people were like, instructors and other men were kind of like, this is a joke. Like, why it's not going to work, like this isn't going to work in our faces. And it was like, is that a motivating tactic, or, because that wasn't very motivating.
Yeah, right. I get that may work for some people. However,
yeah.
However, and was that a trend that you kind of saw throughout your career in the Marine Corps, or was it just kind of that moment in time when you were going through that?
I mean, you definitely did see that, where some people had that mindset where guys did it better, or guys were smarter, or guys, just do things better, or women shouldn't even be in the Marine Corps, or it's like things like that. But it wasn't a lot of the guys that you served with, though, like that you did the hard stuff with, were in the field with, were like, it didn't matter what the other naysayers were saying, because these guys trusted us with everything, and built our confidence up like we were brothers and sisters. So I didn't let it like discourage me, but there definitely were times where I was like, that's not okay, and I kind of wish that I spoke up in a sense on that part when I heard people like just putting others down. It doesn't even have to be women, like others.
Yeah. And that's something I think, and again, because we served very similar times, that it was just the Marine Corps was really evolving, and it was an interesting time to, on one side, right, you'd be like fully fine with people and people supported you, and then it was just like almost whiplash of you didn't know what you were gonna get, right? And it wasn't always negative, it wasn't always good, it was just somewhat of like a whiplash effect. But one of the things that you seem to really enjoy about the Marine Corps was the physical challenges and the physical fitness of it, which I'm sure helped you then and the peers kind of look at you different then and beyond just your gender. Am I correct in that?
Oh God, yeah. Yes. Like I'm very, very big into fitness even now. I think it came from like my love of sports when I grew up. That was like my life. So just that physical fitness, like all through boot camp, you had to do like the O course and things like that. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like doing things, pushing you past your limits. And then like I went to brown belt for McMap. So that's like martial arts. And that was some of like the hardest moments, like carrying a big log on our shoulders with like 7 people, and then like fighting people, but not knowing how to fight, but them teaching us to fight at the same time. And then like getting thrown around like that was at 5 a.m. Like that was so much fun, but it sucked at the same time. It was just like it was so much fun though.
And was that ever even a career or a thought or a path when you were a kid that you would ever potentially end up in something like that, like the Marine Corps?
I knew that I wanted to do something that was like physically challenging. So I remember in like second or third grade, like talking to my grandpa about the army. And that's like really one of the only conversations I had with him. But I did like a book on him, you know, like a book where I drew on him and like what he liked about it. And he played baseball. So I always think I had that in the back of my mind. It was like, even when I was in the Marine Corps, I was like, maybe I could play, you know, a sport. I never really did it, but I was like, that's really, really cool. And that's something that I could see myself doing. So yeah, I do think the military was a thought, maybe not the Marine Corps singled out, because I didn't know a lot about it. I didn't even research before I really went in. I kind of just went in blind.
Yeah, and that makes, I feel like that's how it is for a lot of people. And so you served, how long did you serve again?
It was 4.5 years. I extended a little bit at the end to see if I wanted to reenlist, but ultimately my package got denied, and then so I didn't I could have tried to stay in and went into a different MOS. I just didn't have that fight in me to do that part.
And what was kind of the decisions or the things that impacted that and kind of like broke that fight in you to try and continue?
Um, at the time, I just had Ruby, so she was like 2 months old, and Paris just got to the depot, so he was a drill instructor at the time. Just and we lived 45 minutes from where I worked, and that's like California traffic, so 45 minutes is 2 hours. Um, and her Ruby's daycare was down where I worked, and just doing that drive with a newborn and then getting home to not having time with her, not seeing my husband, not having a support system.
And that was something I know that we've talked about multiple times, and just how different of an experience it is to be a mother and a wife in the Marine Corps. And I appreciate you sharing that, because again, that's something that's not, you're not the only one who went through it, yet you're so alone in the moment. And that decision obviously isn't even easy, because this is, I mean, you're doing something you absolutely love until you can't, right? It's taking you away from your family. Um, and
Yeah.
so how was that transition then out of the Marine Corps once you finally made that decision? How was that transition out?
The first word I would say is rough. Um, Because at first I was like, okay, I will be a stay-at-home mom and I will try to teach as much as my to my daughter as I can. And I I don't know, like I didn't know how to do that. Where like I didn't know how to do that and like keep myself like happy and keep me from wanting to like I guess from having something to keep me going, like having this goal. I didn't make goals for myself. I didn't, you know, we're human, so we need to make ourselves have like something to keep yourself going, whether it's like, okay, I'm going to teach her like 3 things a day. And like I didn't do that at the time, and I didn't have a support system to like around me where it was like, okay, let's get out of the house and like let's go to the park. And I don't think I tried, right? I don't think I tried in that moment because it was like my husband's not home a lot. I don't know. I just didn't want to get up out of the house some days, you know what I'm saying? Like, but then I decided that I was like, okay, let's go to school. So I decided to go to school, get my degree. I got it in political science, and it was awesome. I loved going to school. Loved going to school, and it got me out. It got me like focused on myself and a goal again. Because going from working these long hours, working, doing whatever you can for the Marine Corps to help it and to help them succeed, your peers succeed, you succeed in that, and then going to like a stay-at-home mom. I was like, this is super foreign to me. My husband's not here. Like he's here twice a week and he's sleeping. And he, I don't, and then there's a community with those women, but I just didn't feel like I didn't feel like the motivation to try to find new friends. And it was too hard at the time to do that. So.
And I think you bring up like a point too, where like, in the Marine Corps, you have a career path. Like, I mean, you can change it 20 million times, but there's a career path for anything you want to do. And there is a constant support system essentially. And so to just be completely on your own, and then, hey, at the same token, you're completely responsible for this beautiful, amazing child. And did you ever feel the guilt too that you didn't feel like you wanted to do things? Because that was something I struggled with too. It's like, I should be fulfilled enough by just doing this. And it's like, that's not the case. And that's not something you should feel guilty about.
Yeah, exactly. Like you see, I think it was a couple of people that were closer to me, like some of my family members, like they're super awesome moms and like love it. It just seems that they have everything that they're fulfilled by doing this. But I was like, why can't I be fulfilled by teaching my own kid or, and wanting to do other things? So definitely felt the guilt. You have to kind of tell yourself like whatever is best for me, what makes me happy is going to make them happy in the long run. Because if I'm unhappy, they're not going to be happy with an unhappy mom.
And I think too, like in that moment you are, or at least like I felt so alone too. Like I understand like in the transition, there's so much going on that it's not even like you, and I say this because I know your husband was supportive, but it's not enough. I mean, that sounds bad, but it's not enough because like, your husband's supposed to say these things. They're supposed to like, whatever. And it's just like to not have those people that are like, no, you're doing great. Like you're doing great. And like to just be there to allow you to, I mean, I think that's the hardest piece of it all, is that you, like you said, you literally have to completely like do it for yourself and figure it out for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many resources like at TRS that the Marine Corps like throws out to you, but in a week you're like, what just happened? Like there's no like step one. Just breathe. um and that's, yeah. it's no one's there at the time that's like, let's keep going, let's figure it out. You know what I'm saying? Because you're away from that support system, and you just in the moment you're like trying to figure it out for sure.
And did the transition feel like it was longer than you expected it to be? Like in regards to like feeling like you were transitioning, did that feel like a longer like journey?
Yes. Yes. I honestly was like 2 years where I was like, yeah, I just got out. And I was like, oh, I didn't just get out. I can even do that now. Honestly, it's been, oh my God, like 5 years. And I'm like, it just seems like yesterday, because I feel like just going from the employment at like the employment is completely different. I worked at a nonprofit, and like that was a completely different pace from working in the military. You know, it's just super slower. And then like going to school is completely different too, because there's like I went to an on-campus school, so I'm like older there too, so I don't really fit in with most people. I did find like my ones and twos in classes, which was awesome because that did help me get through some classes, you know, because you need to find people to help you through that were vets, and that's amazing. Like I went and found at UNCW at the vet center, like just to go and do homework with other veterans there. It was really cool because they would just talk about their experiences there too.
And I commend you so much for like, I just thought it was utterly amazing that you are a full-time mom and going to school. That's not even something like I know for a fact I could not do. And to watch you do it, it was awe-inspiring. It really was. And your positivity, and you just have beautiful daughters, and watching you, you know, from a distance watching you, but feeling like I'm also there at the same time, like mildly,
Yeah.
it is amazing to see and to have seen that journey. And you know, you'd mentioned community and veterans, and how important is that in that transition to find that community?
I think especially for, you know, like you need to find people that are like you. Like I feel it's important for women to find women veterans too, because I just feel we have a different connection, you know. To find that, like I have two friends that I still talk to from 2000. We met back in 2015, and we met at the smoke pit one night, and we you know we just hit it off, and we still to this day like check in with each other. Like they one of them transitioned to the army, the other one transitioned out, and they're both like doing awesome. But we checked in heavily, especially at those points, because oh man, like we it's you don't find people that are like you know, kind of like going to school, because they're, you know, doing different things, and you need to find people that are, for us it was talking about like investing or building your own business or books. You know, we're heavily on the growth mindset. I'm trying to be, you know, and they saw that, so they picked up on it. So now, you know, like we're trying to grow together, you know.
And what advice would you give to somebody who is going through that transition now or close to going through that transition? What is something you would advise of them to do?
I would say network is an awesome thing. Networking with with other veterans, or people that the type of jobs that you want to have, going to those types of networks, reaching out to people that you love and are friends with. Like just because they haven't reached out to you doesn't mean they don't love you. I had to realize that like everyone's not you. So if you feel you need to reach out, reach out. Like what's the harm in that? And grow, like learn, just keep reading. If you want to do something, like don't hold back on it. And hone in on your craft too.
Yeah, and I think that's something so important. And you're not doing the same thing you did while you were in the Marine Corps, right? Like you're on a different path now.
like completely. And it changed. I do like a vision board every year, and it changes. Everything changes because things don't go your way, or things do go your way, and or they don't go your way, but it's a good thing. It's a sign where you have things to learn, and that's what I've learned, is that you just because you have a path in your mind, it might not, you won't always lead there, but you have learned to pivot. You learn
You
to
have,
pivot.
and you evolve so much, I think, in that transition. And finally, once you feel like you're kind of at the end, I don't know, I feel like the transition is forever now. Like now being at the Marine Corps, I feel like it's just different like levels, right? Like just different levels of where you're at in the transition.
How you were in 8 years, right?
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
little over 8 years. Very.
I can imagine it's a transition like constantly though. I was in 4.5, and I can't even imagine like after 8 too. Wow.
But I think it also says like how much the Marine Corps does impact you. Like even one term in the Marine Corps impacts your life, and good and bad, right? Like there's good and
Oh
bads
yeah.
of everything, and it's not always sunshine and rainbows, but for the most part, when you talk about it, it's a lot more of the positives, and then yes, the moments of like this was a struggle, and this is there anything that you would change or wished was different in your transition or in your time in the Marine Corps, that if you could go back, like a single moment that you're like, I wish this was different?
Um, the I was young, and a lot of the time I focused on drinking, like with wherever everyone's 21, 22. I was older than most of them, so I was 21. So I focused a lot on that, you know, and I wish I wish I could have stopped that a little bit earlier and started thinking. I think that's everyone though. It's like just partying too much and not working on myself more. I wish I would have just worked on my confidence and things that people can't take away from you, your finances, your education level, not just college, but reading books on your own, and YouTube, such a great free resource too, that I'm recently, like in the past 5 years, using as an awesome tool in my tool belt. So I think just learning about these things earlier, but honestly, you can't go back. So
And you mentioned that you have a vision board that you do every year. What is something on your vision board for like the next year that you're going to accomplish this year? Something that you're like, this is happening.
yeah, so this year, me and Paris, for our business, we are definitely, like, we have by like this quarter. It's not we do have, I don't have the exact number in our head, but we have, this is how many houses we're going to have each quarter, and we have it. Um, I think for this quarter, it's like 10. So we have big goals, big dreams, and we're in this mentorship. It's called the Morby method, and it's like creative financing to to get into real estate, to buy houses. So that's what we're just trying to help the community in, producing safe and affordable homes for people. And then I do have a W-2. I work at Monarch Roofing, and I'm in love with that too. It's fast paced, and it's all about personal growth there. I just recently got promoted to office manager, and I just love it. I love who I work with. I love who I work for, and it's all about promoting the customers, helping the homeowners as best as we can, over promising and over delivering. And on the other side, like with the employees, it is over promising and over delivering. Like they give us personal development books. I'm in a book club with my boss, and it's, if you have ideas, they want you to speak them, because they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what your daily tasks are and how they go. So it's exciting times in my life. I'm so just excited about life right now, and it's amazing, you know.
And I think that it's so important to note that it's because of like where you are and where you've put yourself, right? That has a constant impact, and that is changing that trajectory. And you guys have done it. And again, I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, but we're going to have you and Paris on so that you guys can talk about one. I just think it's dual military in general is one of the hardest things to be. And so I want to talk about that, your guys' journey together, and then where it got to you guys now. But to me, it was so important to tell your story as a Marine before that, because you have your own individual story. And when you're married, yes, your lives combine, but at the same time, you still have your own story. And I appreciate you so much for sharing your story and letting us be a part of it. And so I am going to ask you one more question, which is, if you had to take the oath again, would you?
Yes.
And is there anything else that you want to talk about or want to mention about your time and your journey in the Marine Corps and where you are now?
The only thing I would say is that I loved every minute of it, and just for anyone who is in right now, say yes to all the opportunities. Like, they throw so many different things in your face, and you might not know what OSHA 10 is, but you might use it, you know, or, you know, like these, just say yes to any opportunity. And while you're transitioning, you're not alone, you know, just get out of the shell. And really just try to find other like-minded individuals. There's people out there like you that are looking for the same thing. You know, you just kind of have to go out there and find it. But it's worth it.
This is the Oath We Took podcast, and you just heard a piece of Kenzie's story. You now know one more Marine and one more piece of the Marine Corps history. Her story matters. Her service matters. Not every Marine story is the same. We didn't all join the military for the same reason. What is the same is the oath that we all took. An oath that easily could have ended in death, and for some, it did. So listeners, instead of asking you to thank a Marine for their service, I am going to challenge you to continue to listen to their stories instead.